Hi, and welcome to Recovered, Interviews with Alcoholics, a podcast from the Magdalen House, a recovery community for alcoholism. We're a 501c3 nonprofit in Dallas, Texas, lovingly known by many as Maggies. Every first and third Wednesday, we drop a new episode from one of our 3 podcast series. In Recovered, a recovered alcoholic from our community sits down and shares their story, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I'm your host, Laura Wilson, a recovered alcoholic and the communications manager here at Maggie's. Whether you're in recovery, curious about sobriety, or here to support someone you care about, we're really glad you're tuning in. Thanks for being here. Hello, podcast listeners, and welcome to this week's episode of Recovered, Interviews with Alcoholics. Today, we are interviewing Kirby Jean. So, Kirby, welcome.
Hi.
So glad you're here.
Thanks.
Yes. So we're going to just get right into it today. So tell me about what your drinking career looked like up to the point that you got help.
I was an everyday, all day drinker. I would drink from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed. I would hide my drinking throughout the day, and then I would pretend I hadn't drank all day and sit down for my first drink with my then boyfriend and proceed to not remember the end of the evening and wake up and repeat. And it was pretty awful. And every day I woke up hoping that I could not drink again, and I was drinking by 7 a.m. And every night I was hoping that I drank enough to not wake up the next morning. And that was on repeat.
When did you first realize that you maybe had a problem with alcohol, or that alcohol was causing problems in your life?
I realized probably back in 2020, my relationship was breaking apart, and my mom showed up and tried to take me to rehab, and I just stopped drinking on command just to prove a point. And then when I started drinking again, it became a necessity. Like, I couldn't go an hour without drinking, and that's when I was like, this isn't right. Like, I shouldn't be shaking after an hour of not drinking, but I was. So it became like I needed it to survive. So it got scary.
How were you able to just, you said that, when your mom threatened rehab or that you needed to go get help, how were you able to just stop? And then how long did that last?
I am very stubborn, and I figured, well, I'm going to prove to you that I don't have a problem with alcohol. And at that point, it was willpower. It was miserable. I made it, I think, 84 days, but because I wasn't working a program, everything around me was still miserable. My partner was still in drinking, and everything was still my fault, even though I wasn't drinking. So I got a case of the F-its, and I started drinking again because I had stopped drinking and everything was still bad. So what was the point? I might as well drink.
Right.
Yeah.
And normal people don't necessarily sit there and think like, oh, I haven't drank for 84 days. Like, they're not counting how long.
Oh, I know.
They're not drinking.
I was counting every drink he had, and I was counting every time. And it was funny because I would still get blamed for things, but I wasn't drinking. And so I was like, no, everything just stinks. Why am I not drinking? I clearly am not the problem, But, like, no, other people don't think about the fact that they haven't drank. But I did.
Sounds like you were obsessing about it.
1,000%. I was bartending at the time, and I was, oh my God, fantasizing about every drink I poured for other people. And when I started drinking again, it was, oh, I can just have one drink in public, and to prove that I could just drink one drink. People don't do that. And then it was, I would have one drink in public, but I'd have wine in my purse. And then it was, well, I'm going to drink like I want in public and have wine in my purse. And as you can tell, it progressively just built and built and built. So it was awful.
Did you have any major consequences while this was happening, or were these mainly just the internals of, the self-pity, not having self-worth?
At first, no. And I think that's what made me believe that I wasn't an alcoholic, because I had a job, I had an apartment, I had a relationship, and I had a car. So, and I hadn't had those big consequences. Towards the reason I tried to stop drinking this time, I tried to do it on my own again, because I had done it once. I figured I could. was because my boyfriend at the time told me he was going to move to Vegas because he didn't know it was my drinking. He just thought I was crazy.
As one does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was 1,000% my drinking, but he didn't. I hid it. He thought I only drank with him. He didn't know I was drinking all day and blacking out every night because that's what normal people do, right? They drink all day and then still drink at night. I don't know. I don't know what I thought was normal about anything that I did. So
it's justifying it so that they don't take away your alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had just lost my job because my employer smelled alcohol in my breath, and I just cut my losses and didn't fight it. I just kind of said I wasn't going to come back. So in my brain, I justified that I didn't get fired. I just chose to leave.
Right.
I got into a car accident, and because I had enough money to buy a new car, I just left the crashed car in the parking lot behind my apartment. So there were consequences, but I think you hit the nail on the head. I justified it. Denial was interwoven into everything I did.
It sounded like you had the countless vain attempts to try to prove that you were like other people, and those failed continuously. Mm-hmm. When was the moment that you finally decided that you wanted to try and seek help?
I remember stopping drinking, and I was on my couch, and I could not keep this much water down. I could not keep this much alcohol down. I had convinced my boyfriend that it was a sugar, like my glucose was falling out. And so he went and bought a bunch of things with sugar because we didn't have any in the apartment. And in the time it took him from dropping the groceries off to go park the car and come back, I had passed out. I don't know what happened, but I was on the floor. And I looked up and I said, "You need to call 911. He said, "You don't have insurance." And I go, "I'm an alcoholic. I need to go to the hospital now." And I don't know what came over me, but I shouldn't have been on the floor, and I was scared. I hadn't kept down more than this much water, alcohol, anything in the past 2 days. I was scared. And by the time I got to the hospital, I guess I wasn't even speaking. I mean, it's all a blur to me. I remember trying to tell them what was going on, but my boyfriend, or now fiance, will tell you that I was talking gibberish, that no one could understand me, and that was terrifying.
So when you were able to, I guess, come to in the hospital, did any of the nurses or anyone there try to offer you suggestions on what to do next or how to get help? Or, I mean, were you honest with them?
It was such a blur, and my mom was there, and so I had gotten to the point that they told my family that if I had not made it there when I did, the next muscle to stop working was going to be my heart, and that was from stopping drinking. So when my physical therapist was walking me around on a leash because my legs didn't work, and I guess she passed along the name Magdalen House to my mom. My mom wrote it down, and when I got out, I reluctantly called. I waited till Sunday when I figured no one would pick up. And I called and I left a voicemail, assuming no one would call back because I didn't leave my phone number. Like good alcoholics, like I did the task, and then somebody called me on Monday morning. And, to be totally honest, I figured I would just do it to get my mom off my back. I figured whatever, 3 months, I can do this next step thing and see what happens, and she'll go home and I can go back to drinking the way I wanted to.
Right. Was
my thought process, to be completely honest.
How'd that work out for you?
It didn't. I remember the first time that I was able to feel confident walking enough on my own. I walked to the gas station next to the extended stay that we were at to get cigarettes, and I remember looking around and they didn't have wine. And the thought that went through my head was, I can't drink a beer because it won't get me drunk enough in the walk back. And so I can tell you now, God was looking out for me then, because if I had found wine, I would have drank that day without question. In terms of coming in, I was going through the motions until I started. I'm pretty sure the first day I sat down a little bit was when I heard somebody talk about hiding their wine in a laundry basket. And I was like, what? I do that. But I'm not an alcoholic. Because I was still looking for all the ways that I did not belong there.
Right.
These ladies had DUIs. Their families didn't support them. My mom was there, right? Like, I was not an alcoholic. But I could go through the motions, and I looked at the steps like a checklist. But the truth was, I was miserable. My life had been miserable for so long. Every day, I think I already said this, I woke up and drank to try and get the shakes to go away. And then had to keep drinking throughout the day to keep the shakes away. And then I prayed. I don't know if it was praying, but I was hoping that I would drink enough to not wake up the next day. Because the internal dialogue in my head day in and day out was, you're a piece of crap. You don't belong here. You don't deserve to be alive. Why are you even bothering? You might as well just end it. And then don't make a mess for your mom. And then every morning I woke up, you can't even end it right. You can't even drink enough to not wake up. And that was my day-to-day life. And it wasn't until I heard somebody quote Bill's story where it talked about that bitter morass of self-pity that outstretched around us. And I had met my match. I had been like quicksand. And that metaphor was just, oh my God, that's me. That's how I felt. I was desperately trying to stop drinking, but I had to drink more. And like that quicksand it talked about, it pulled me in. And so it says, I had been overwhelmed. I had met my match. And alcohol was my master. And I was like, maybe alcoholism is not drinking vodka out of a paper bag like I thought it was. It was these feelings that I was dealing with every day. And so that helped me sit down and listen.
These women are coming in and sharing these next step meetings, and they start to get your attention because you can relate to them. When was the moment that you heard the definition of alcoholism with the body and the mind? And did it take you a minute to relate to it, or did your experience show you that it aligned with step one?
It took me a minute. Like when I was told to start going to meetings at Magdalen House, and I did, and I didn't, and it wasn't until it was till after I heard somebody talk about wine in a laundry basket, and then next step said, you have to answer these questions. And so I had to go into the book and fill out these questions about what they were talking about. And then I realized, because I grew up with an alcoholic father, right? So like I had heard my whole life, your dad's sick, your dad's sick, your dad's sick. He's not choosing alcohol over you. But I did not understand. So the first time I read the doctor's opinion, I heard, you're sick. Cool. But it wasn't until I heard woman after woman after woman in the meetings repeat it and repeat it their way and repeat it their experience that I was like, oh, you mean I'm drinking, but I don't want to be drinking. And it was like, then I heard it described as an allergy, and somebody talked about a peanut allergy. And I was like, and they're like, but we don't care that we swell up and we drink anyway. And I was like, oh, that's me. That's me. Like, I know it's killing me, but I'm going to do it anyway. Like, it was just, yeah, it was not until I heard it over and over and over again. Like, it was the repetition that finally, like, it just, oh, okay, that is me. If that makes sense. Like,
makes total sense. Okay, so you can get on board with the allergy.
Mm-hmm.
When they started talking about the mental obsession, what was that like for you?
I think there was a validation moment. Somebody told me, like, you're drinking against your will, but it's not because you are weak that it clicked for me, because I prided myself on being able to do the things that I said I was going to do. Somebody broke down the line that said, our reliance upon things human. Somebody talked about going to the gym, and somebody talked about going to therapy and doing all these things to fix those superficial things, all of those things that I had done, because truth be told, I thought I had anxiety and depression. And if you want to laugh, I was like, well, I don't want to take medication for it because I have an addictive personality, and then I'm not being my authentic self, so I'm just going to drink it instead, right? Like, I'm going to self-medicate.
That makes sense to me, but I'm also an alcoholic, so I don't know if...
But, like, that's what happened, is I heard other women have these delusional thoughts, and I was like, wait a second. And I remember talking to my sponsor that I have now, not my first sponsor, but I remember hearing her story, and I was like, oh, wow, she's made it even further than I in this disease, and she's made it back. And that was, like, the first time that I was like, oh. And I don't want to say, like, hearing people's war stories made it easier for me to see myself as an alcoholic, but I started to hear consequences as yets, right? Instead of things that I didn't have, and they were, you're eligible to. And that really struck home, because it meant I didn't have to experience all of it. And then my sponsor also said that unmanageability didn't have anything to do with consequences. That unmanageability has nothing to do with the fact that I haven't gotten a DUI and I haven't wrecked my car and not been able to replace it. It meant that I could not manage the decision to stay stopped on my own. And that, once I finally heard it, that was the truth. And I have written in the front of my book, like, the unprotected thought gets you drunk. And that's something that's always stayed with me, because it's like, I didn't lose that obsession right away like a lot of people did. People talked about, like, oh, I had a third step experience and the desire to stop drinking went away. No. For me, it was, I think I was close to 9 or 10 months when the obsession felt like it lifted. And so for me, it was a matter of seeing it on TV everywhere and being like, why can't I drink that? But knowing if I drink that, I won't stop. It was having conversations with people and saying, I don't just want to drink. I want all of it. And the more I heard that, the more I played it out. And if I'm honest, fear kept me sober for a long time, because I did not want to have to go through the sobriety again, the beginning of it. I didn't want to let people down. I didn't. And so it says in the book, like, fear sober, like, I stumbled from the hospital and fear sobered me for a bit. It kept me sober for a while, until I could hear all the things that I needed to hear, till I could establish that step one truth for myself of, it's not a matter of if I drink again, it's a matter of when. And so that idea that the unprotected thought gets me drunk gave me permission to have the thought, but then use the tools that were given to me to protect the thought, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So you get on board with step one, you accept your truth.
Mm-hmm.
So you decide to start working the steps. So take me through the rest of the steps. So what would your step 2 look like?
So as I said, I started this program. I was just going to do the checklist, right? So I picked a woman I met on Zoom, because in the beginning, back then in Next Step, you had to do a check-in every morning. Picked a woman I met on Zoom. I did my first step, my second step, and my third step over the phone. Clearly checking boxes. I started working on my fourth step with very little direction. I was going to show everybody why I drank, right? And that's what I did. I tried to meet my sponsor about 4 times. The people in Next Step thought that I was the one avoiding, which, looking back now, I 100% believe why. But I truly was, by that point, like, desperate to, even if I was desperate to get through the steps to prove a point, I was still desperate to get through the steps. And so they finally were like, maybe you need to find a new sponsor. So I asked somebody who I'd seen in the rooms a lot of times. They pointed me in the direction of somebody else. I called that person, and we met for coffee. And so we did 1, 2, and 3 pretty quickly. And 1 was basically, she asked me, do you want to be done for good and all? Are you willing to go through whatever it takes? Pretty sure she asked me if I'm willing to stand in the middle of Ross Ave with a feather in my ass if I wanted to get sober. And then the next question she asked me, well, so then when we got to step 2, it was just a question. And step 2 was difficult for me because I had a lot of anger towards this idea of a higher power. The book calls it prejudices. I bristled at the idea of religion, God, all of the things. But she didn't ask me to define anything or believe in anything. She asked me one question, which was, do you believe that I believe in something that restored me to sanity? That woman had told me her story. And like I said, she had made it further than me. I could see the whites of her eyes. She had yoga pants that fit her, and she looked put together. And I kid you not, like, I just wanted what she had. Like, it was, I could see, I believed her when she told me her story, and I heard my story in that, and then I wanted to be like her. And so when she asked me, and she had 3 years. 3 years. I had not strung together 3 days of willing sobriety in the past decade. So 3 years was unfathomable to me. And so when she asked me, do you believe that I believe in something that restored me to sanity? I said yes, because I wanted it. I didn't understand it, and I didn't have to. We didn't dwell on it. We just moved on. And then we went to step 3. We briefly talked about it, we didn't go into too much detail. And that was okay. We went back to it because all she told me was right then and there, the only decision I was making was to go through the rest of the steps. Was I willing to work the rest of the steps, 4 through 12, like my butt was on fire, like I wanted to? And I said yes. Now let me set the stage for you. We're sitting in Starbucks at this lovely communal table, reading this blue book that has bright lettering that says Alcoholics Anonymous. So everybody knows I'm an alcoholic at this point in this whole Starbucks. And she goes, okay, so we're going to get on our knees and pray. I looked at her like she had 7 heads, I think, but I didn't want to be a liar because I had just told her I'd willing to be rigorously honest and that I'd go do anything to do the steps. So I very reluctantly, we got on our knees and we prayed. And the craziest thing happened. We got back up and nobody was looking at us. Nobody came over. Nobody asked us who died. Nothing. She gave me a couple other things that I had to do, sent me on my way. I went home and I was driving home and I had this crazy thought. Oh my God, I am not as important as I thought I was. Nobody thinks about me as much as I do. And like, that started changing things because like I read Selfish and Self-Centered and I was like, that's not me. I hate myself. I couldn't see that as thinking about myself all the time. So that was my 3rd step experience. I did not see a burning bush, but I realized that was not that important. And that started the process. And the 4th step, I was pretty excited. Again, I already had it done, right? And she basically told me to rip it up and start over. So that was fun. Still was going into it thinking I'm going to show them why I drink. If you had the childhood I did, you would drink too, right? That's pretty common feeling. I walked in and we did the 5th step and man, that was eye-opening. I learned pretty quickly. I really, to this day, I don't know that I remember much of the conversation. I don't. But I remember hearing that I was a fixer, and I knew that was true. I was a people pleaser, and I didn't see how those things were selfish previously, but it hit me like a ton of bricks when I did. And then I was told to go home and lay down for an hour and just be with God, which I was not really excited about because, one, I wasn't good at turning my thoughts off at that point, but I did it, and I will say that was probably the first time that I didn't feel alone. Like, that's the first time I felt like I couldn't define it, but I felt like what I now call God was taking some of the weight. Like, I had walked into that 5th step like I was carrying all the furniture in this room, and when I got up from that hour, I felt like it was back on the floor and I could just walk. I think that's the best way to describe it. So yeah, that's kind of where that was. Then I don't really remember exactly what happened after that. Everything else kind of seemed to go pretty quickly. 6 and 7 seemed to fly by. Objectionable is the biggest word. Objectionable and humility were the big things that popped out to me in that, and like realizing that I had to find things objectionable that I was doing because I didn't find a lot of them objectionable. I started doing a nightly after I did my 5th step, and what that exposed for me is like I will not forget calling my sponsor after about a week, and I had put my sister all over my nightly. I was resentful one day. I was selfish with her another day. I was in fear for her another day. Something good another day. So she was all over my nightly. So I figured, but in different places. So I didn't think it was anything. And my sponsor was like, I was waiting for you to call. When are we going to talk about your sister? And I was like, oh, wow. So that was like really eye-opening for me, as like, that's why my sponsor's there, to see what I can't see. And so 6, 7, then we get to 8, and we go through that harms list. And I truly believed I did not hurt people, because I drank alone, and I really thought that my drinking didn't hurt people. I just drank alone, and I kept it to myself. It wasn't like my sister who took money from everyone. And so I was pretty isolated down here. I only had Jeff, who I was with then, and then my former employer. And so my first amends was to Jeff. And I remember we were no longer together. But I remember talking to my sponsor about making that amends. And what stuck out to me was, you are not making an amends to fix this relationship. You are making an amends to right your side of the street. And I had never done that. I had never made an amends to take responsibility and not fix the situation, if that makes sense. I always had to achieve an outcome. So walking into that without knowing the outcome was terrifying. And then it was also like, you're not going to, like, you can give him a hug, but like, you don't get to fix the relationship and have a kiss and like all these things that like you think like, I'm saying sorry and I'm going to fix the relationship and it's going to be happily ever after, right? Like, so that was hard for me to understand. My next amends was terrifying, because it was to my employer, and to say, and like, even the fact that she agreed to meet me, I thought was crazy. But the really cool thing was, she asked questions, and she wasn't mad at me. She wanted to know what I was doing and what this whole disease was. And it was the first time that I was able to talk about it. I was still didn't feel like I had all the answers, but she wished me the best. And she said, keep doing what you're doing. Like, you were great at your job. You will be great at your job again. Just do what you need to do for you. And she's checked up on me over the years, which is really cool. So, yeah, those were my first 2 amends there. And I was worried that I'd have to make all of my amends, but my family didn't live here. And I was told that until I could see them in person, it was going to be living amends, which meant I had to take a look at my relationships. And one of the biggest relationships that I looked at, my sponsor had me do a scene and sound with my mom. And that was hard, because one of the things she had me do is, what do you want your relationship with your mom to look like? And so I said, and one of the first things I wrote down was, I want my mom to just call and ask how I'm doing. And there were other things on there. And then my sponsor turned around and said, okay, now you have to do those things. And I realized I had not called my mom and asked her how she was doing in years. I had not asked her how she was. I always called with a motive. I always had something to do. And so I started doing that. Now that meant preparing for a 45-minute to hour-long conversation every time. But that meant that I was asking how she was and letting her talk. And that seems so simple now, but like, that was hard. And like, it just drilled in how selfish I was. And yeah, so that was like 9 and 10, or 8 and 9. 10, like I said, doing the 10 steps was very difficult for me. The phone was heavy. My sponsor liked to ask me first, have you prayed? And I usually said no, and she hung up on me. So I would learn to pray first. And so then by the time I called, have you prayed? Yes, but I'm still pissed off. And that was okay. And And it did take me longer to call a lot of the time, but my sponsor was famous for one-liners that stuck in my head really, really poignantly. Some of the ones that really stuck with me was, every time you don't call me, you're being selfish because you're denying me an opportunity to be of service to you. And so I didn't like being called selfish, so I tried to be better at that. Still not the best, but that one stayed. And then one of the things that stuck out always was, what is dark will come to light. And for me, I like to have my fingers in things. And like, again, as a fixer, I needed to fix things. And so what is dark will come to light meant I needed to take my hands off and have faith that God would take care of it. And for me, that was difficult because sitting still felt like I wasn't doing anything, but I learned that there was action and pause. So that was a big lesson. Step 11, I think the coolest thing for me in this whole program was God as you understand him. It's underlined in the 3rd step, it's underlined in the 11th step, and that defines my recovery because it did change throughout that. In the beginning, GOD to me was a group of drunks. It was all the people that had whites in their eyes. I keep saying that, but like those people who laughed, and I checked the closets in the meeting room and there wasn't wine. Like I didn't believe it was possible. Right. So those people, that group of drunks, the people in the next step room that told me what to do, it was good orderly direction. If my sponsor told me to do something, I did it. I might have stomped my feet, and I'm pretty sure I was given permission to, but I did it anyway. I was voluntold to do a lot of things, and I'm grateful for every single one of them. So I say that to say, as my sobriety continued, my relationship with God has developed, and today, God is a generic term for not me. So I use God because it's simple. Because I can say I'm giving it up to God, like it's God's plan, all of that. But I never had to define it. It's just not me, right? But it's powerful because God's in charge of the results, not me. And that is the idea that I can't, he can, I'm going to let him. That's my day-to-day story. So step 11 is similar to that. It evolved. In the beginning, it was as simple as, thank you for waking me up today. Thank you for keeping me sober today. That's all I could muster. Slowly, I started reading the meditations in the morning, laying in bed, kind of just going through the motions again, but doing it. Then it was like, oh, you're fitting God in. So then I started to make sure I read my meditation before social media. That was a big step, but it was something. I tried different things. I enjoyed listening to like the St. Francis prayer meditation. That was really helpful for me. I called my sponsor one day and I was like, one of the first questions she asked me was, what does your prayer and meditation look like? And I was like, oh, well, I listened to this in the parking lot or on my way to work. And it was like, okay, so you're fitting it into your schedule again. So I wasn't making time for it. And that happened over and over again. And I had to evolve my prayer and meditation life to adapt to that. So today, what that looks like is at night I do my nightly. I've done my nightly pretty consistently, I would say, for the past 3.5 years. I think I went 2 weeks and my sponsor texted me and asked if I was alive. And it was a case of, yes, I felt guilty for not sending it, and then I felt like I had to call you, and then I didn't, and it was silly. It's an alcoholic brain getting into it, but it's, again, the idea that those habits are what keep me on track, because if I forget to do my nightly, even if I forget to do it, the morning I wake up, I'm thinking about the fact that I didn't do it because I fell asleep. So the first thing I'm thinking about in the morning is my program. It's bringing me back into it. And so today, my morning meditation, I get up and I get on my knees. The last thing I do before I leave for the morning is I get up and I get on my knees in the bathroom and I pray. I take some of the things that are bothering me from my nightlies, and then the next thing I do is I give myself a high five in the mirror and make eye contact with myself, because
love it.
I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
Like when I started this program, I couldn't do it. And it took It took a lot longer than I want to admit to be able to do it. And then I have days when I can't do it today. And that's like, okay, what's going on? And like take an extra second for yourself, because if you can't remember to do that, then what's going on? The next, I guess, is 12, which step 12 for me is carrying this into my everyday life. One of the quotes that I heard at a speaker meeting at one point was, once you make a commitment in this program, there's no decision. And that's something that's been really, really important for me. I have carried the message with the same person for most of my sobriety. On Friday, every other Friday night, I have overnighted for every Friday or Saturday night for the majority of my sobriety. I was also carrying the message with my home group for a while. And now I chair a regular meeting at Maggie's. All of those things just keep me connected. And the reason I say, like, it's so important to make those commitments is I was going to meet like 5-6 meetings a week, right, early in sobriety. And then I got the opportunity to start grad school. And I remember freaking out because I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do everything. I'm working full time. I'm in grad school. I'm not going to be able to do everything. And so I chose, my commitments were Friday night and Saturday morning. And so every Friday night and every Saturday morning, I went, that was my recovery, and I stockpiled it in that time because I didn't miss it. Like, that was what was there. And that didn't mean I was not working my program anywhere else I could fit it in. It meant when everything was really, like, because something's got to give, but it couldn't be my sobriety. It could not be. And I was still working with other women. I was still sponsoring and like doing that type of stuff, but like I wasn't going to as many meetings, and I thought that would kill my sobriety. But it actually made it stronger because it let me lean into the other tools that I had, and it reminded me that like meetings aren't what keep you sober, right? My sponsor always told me, you don't go to meetings for yourself. If you need a meeting, it's a little late. Like, you go to meetings for somebody else that you are going to be able to help. And yeah, so those commitments were important to me.
So you've sponsored, you've carried the message. I mean, it sounds like that you have put this program first in your life since day one, and the results have kind of spoken for themselves and what your life looks like today. Mm-hmm. And I want to get into that a little bit later, but before we do, I kind of want to get into talking about using the tools of the program. You went through a couple of very traumatic events in 2024. Do you mind telling me about them and how you were able to get through these things without drinking and still staying sober today?
Yeah. 2024 was rough. I remember the end of 2023. And being like, I think it was the first time I admitted I was happy. And that was scary, right? Because I spent my whole life waiting for the shoe to drop. And then in January, it did. I found out my dad was in the hospital, and my dad's an alcoholic, if I didn't say that, but he was also battling throat cancer, and he had been doing radiation, and I talked to him pretty much every day. Like, I thought everything was going okay, but I also had boundaries with him because he was an alcoholic, and when he was drinking, it was, I could not talk to him. And so when I didn't hear from her for a weekend, it wasn't abnormal because he's an alcoholic, and he actually respected the fact that, like, when he was drinking, he wouldn't call. Long story short, I found out he was in the hospital. It was the freeze here that year, and I finally got on the phone with the charge nurse, and I was like, if this was your dad, would you be there? And she goes, I'd be here yesterday. And so I flew down there. When I got there, he was unresponsive. I just did the next right thing. I mean, I just did what I could. I was there. I called people. I talked to my sponsor. She's like, whatever you need, I'm here. But I never once thought about drinking because I was just like, what's the next thing I have to do? What's the next thing I have to do? And there was a sense of responsibility. I did ask for help when they were divorced, but my mom offered to come down, and I said yes. That's something that I wouldn't have done in the past. I accepted help. And I continued to pray. And this is when I say, like, stockpiling that good stuff helped, because I was, in my mind, this was one of the worst things that could possibly happen, was losing a parent, right? But at the same time, I knew he was no longer suffering. I mean, when I saw his house, it was hard. And it was really hard. And so there was some peace in the fact that he was no longer suffering. That was kind of a quick turnaround. I came back. I just called the lawyer, started taking care of the estate, and it was just kind of like got thrown back into doing daily life. And that was kind of like, it was so hard. But the second I got back, my friends were there. Like, my girlfriends took me to a meeting the first night I was back. That following Friday, I was back here at Maggie's. I was surrounded by women. And it was just, I let people in. And again, it was my dad. He was older. He had cancer. It was kind of like there was acceptance in that being. So by the time I got kind of like that start, June was hard because it was my sobriety birthday. I was celebrating, was it 2 years? Three, that year, and it was Father's Day. So that hit me again, but I got to look at this. I stayed sober. This is remarkable, right? Fast forward to October, and I was finally starting to feel like myself again. Like, grief is one of those things that never leaves you, but you learn how to live with it. And so I missed my dad every day, talking to him every day, but I was able to talk to other people. I was able to talk about it, and it became part of my prayer and meditation. I talked to him every day on the way home. And then I was at work on a Friday, had my bag packed because I was at Maggie's that night, and I can't look at my phone during work, but I saw missed calls from my mom, and I was like, that's not right. And then all of a sudden somebody's like, Kirby, your boyfriend's here. And so, like, I walked out to the parking lot, and my mom told me my sister was in the hospital on life support, and I collapsed. I didn't know what to do. My boss came out. She said, go home. And I said, okay. So Jeff was like, come to my office with me. And on the way, I called my sponsor. And by the time I got to his office, it was decided he would find me a flight, and I was going to Maggie's because I was scheduled to volunteer. So there was nothing else I could do in that moment. But I had a commitment to be at Maggie's to volunteer. So it was early. I looked up the house needs list, and I went grocery shopping. I bought everything on the house needs list because the only thing I knew to do was to help somebody else. And so I brought that there, and I just sat in the office with the women. And I was numb, like, but I was at Maggie's, so it felt okay. I don't know how else to explain that. At a certain point, like, I was driving on my way there. I stopped. We talked to the surgeon, like, and oh gosh, it's all a blur. But all I know is at a certain point, my mom called and asked if I wanted to say goodbye to my sister. And I ended up saying goodbye to my sister in the next step room, or not the overnight room. And I went downstairs, and I got to pray with two women who had siblings that were still out there using. So again, I felt surrounded by people who understood. An impossible situation to understand, but there were two other women with siblings out there. You know what I mean? So and we prayed together. And God, I was so angry, but I was numb. I didn't know what to do. that I talked about it. And then after the ladies went to bed, I went home. I had a flight booked for the next morning, and I got on the flight and I went home to my family, and it was a rough 2 weeks. I found meetings to go to up there, but this program, the principles of just like, because I hated everyone, and I didn't want to pray, but I was mad at God, and I was mad at this disease. Like, it didn't make sense. My sister was younger than me, like, and why there was so many feelings, but I did what I knew how to do, which was put one foot in front of the other. It was to ask for help. It was to not respond if I didn't have the capacity to respond to people. Like, that is something that this program taught me, is like, that people pleasing in me before felt like I had to respond to everyone and give everyone the time. I didn't. I processed, and, you know, not once did I think about drinking. Not then.
I mean, it sounds like using the tools of the program by helping others, and you know, despite going through this horrible moment, it's like you still found comfort in being here at the Magdalen House and helping other people.
Yeah. And somebody said it to me, and I wasn't ready to hear it, but somebody said, your story will help somebody someday. And now, a couple, almost 2 years later, like, there was a woman that was in the house that night that I didn't know. Again, a blur, so I didn't even recognize it. And they're still sober today, and they said seeing me there changed their sobriety, because they learned that this program wasn't about not drinking anymore.
Right.
It was about getting through life. And when I had that experience afterwards, it gave meaning to something that didn't have any meaning, right? And it's still hard, and it still stinks, but in the 12 and 12, it talks about when you get to that point of being so angry at God that you don't want to talk to God. And I go back to my nightly. I was mad at this disease. I was mad at this disease. I was mad at this disease. But every single night of that, even if I was mad at God too, I got to say I'm grateful to be sober on those days. Which, if nothing else, like, my sponsor even said, you don't have to write these every night. And some of the nights I was like, I just have to say that I'm grateful to be sober, because I have that. And that's something that I wouldn't have been able to say without this program. And yeah, that experience was unparalleled.
That's so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that, and for sharing that, you know, for our listeners, because it is true. It's, you know, it's life on life's terms is really what we get to learn to deal with in this program. If somebody was listening to this and they are struggling with the idea of working the steps, what would you tell them?
If somebody's struggling to work these steps, I would say that the book tells us it's a solution to our problem. And even though it seems like our only problem right now might be alcohol, it gives you a solution to everything. Because this program taught me how to live life. Like just like you said, on life's terms. It taught me how to life stopped happening to me, and I was able to just walk through life. And if you're struggling with the steps, do it anyway. Just do it anyway. Whatever your excuse is, just listen to your sponsor, do it anyway. And it doesn't have to look perfect, because you get the opportunity to go back and work these steps every day and have new experiences. So don't get hung up on the little parts of it.
What would you want someone to know listening to this about the Magdalen House?
If somebody's listening to this and they're even contemplating calling the Magdalen House, I would just ask them, what do you have to lose? Because even if you don't believe in God, God lives in this place. And one of the greatest lessons that I learned, because I remember walking in and people kept saying they loved me. And I was like, you don't know me. How could you say you love me? They loved me until I learned to love myself. And then I now get to give back that love. But when they tell you they love you, they mean it. Unlike the rest of the world, when somebody tells you they love you at the Magdalen House, they mean it. And you are exactly where you belong.
This has been amazing, Kirby. Is there anything else that we did not talk about that you want to mention or talk about? Or what does your life look like today? What are you getting ready for?
My life looks absolutely nothing like what I thought it could be. So I am actually getting ready for my wedding.
Woo!
A sober wedding with no alcohol, which I never thought possible because I thought alcohol was a needed thing. But we are having a sober wedding. I'm working my dream job. I finally figured out what I want to be when I grow up, and I absolutely adore it. And it's all because I put this program first, and I continue to put it first. And it's, for lack of a better word, badass.
I love it. Anything else that we did not cover?
Or
Or anything that you want, if somebody's listening to this struggling about, just what would you tell them?
stop taking yourself so seriously, I think. And I mean that with all the love in my heart, because I thought I had to do this perfectly, and you don't. Like, it's in the imperfections where you learn all the stuff, and it's okay to still be imperfect, because I'm definitely still imperfect. And yeah.
You're not unique.
Really?
I know, I hate to break it to you.
Dang it.
Kirby, this has been great. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and walking us through the steps. And, I really hope that if anybody's going through something that they think they just can't get through without drinking, give Kirby a call. Find her on Facebook. She will definitely walk you through it.
Please do. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for listening to Recovered, Interviews with Alcoholics. If this episode has offered hope, clarity, or comfort to you, please consider making a donation to the Magdalen House. By paying it forward, you help make sure the next alcoholic gets the same chance, completely free. You can give anytime at magdalenhouse.org. We release new episodes every first and third Wednesday, so be sure to tune in. Want to learn more or stay connected? Visit magdalenhouse.org or find us on social by searching The Magdalen House. The Magdalen House is a privately funded 501c3 nonprofit in Dallas, Texas, and every program we offer is possible because people like you choose to give. Thank you for helping us change and save lives.